Who the hell are you guys?
Welcome to the Story Map Screenwriting Podcast. My name is Dan Calvisi of act4screenplays.com. I'm the author of the Story Map series of screenwriting books. Today we're talking about the epic Avengers Infinity War. Joining me once again is Steve Lam. He is the co-founder and co-editor of the fan review of the fanboyreview.com. Hey Steve, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Dan. Yeah, it's quite a mouthful, that name. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about this, you could say, a capstone movie for the 10-year Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is quite an achievement for any franchise.
Yeah, you were calling it the super franchise because it's not only been Avengers team movies, but we've had solo movies, which have their own franchises, like, for example, Iron Man 1 to 3. And then you have TV as well, because we have the Marvel TV universe with the Netflix shows and the major network shows. So we're now seeing, this is basically the culmination of 10 years of all this content coming together. Not the TV stuff, that's a whole other thing, but just the fact that everybody who's ever been following anything Marvel on TV or film is going to go see this movie, and it's breaking records. It will hopefully overcome Star Wars: The Force Awakens. As of now, opening weekend, this is Sunday, it's now predicted to beat Star Wars: The Force Awakens opening by 2 million. They're saying it did 250 million domestic, 630 million worldwide, which is just crazy. So it's huge. It's about as huge as you can get, right?
Yeah, that's just amazing. It's actually not a surprise to me, because you have all these great heroes that had their great solo movies. So having them culminate into this one ensemble film is actually, this is what comic fans have dreamed of all these years, is like all of these heroes mingling together and, fighting on one team.
Yeah, and it's interesting, if you're like more of a Guardians of the Galaxy fan, it's almost like there's enough of them in this film. It's almost like a new Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Yep.
And then if you're an Avengers fan, there's all of the core Avengers, and then there's the new Avengers, and you really get to see where all those relationships have come from. It's truly an epic film. It's almost like the term epic was made for this movie, applied to superhero movies.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as usual, we're going to talk about what we call kind of screenwriting lessons. There are things that really impressed us about the film, and they're things that we think a new or practicing screenwriter could maybe think about when they were writing their own screenplay, not just genre movies like superhero movies or action movies, but also no matter what genre you're writing. So this is just about good dramatic principles. And we're gonna do some of ours are overlapping. Usually we do 5 and 5. Some of ours are overlapping, so we're probably gonna have like 6 or 7 points that we're gonna make. Did you feel like these immediately jumped to mind after seeing the film, Steve?
So I was actually very impressed with the way they wrote it, and it's another testament of, the rules and the templates already set. There's no need to break away from it. It works because it plays into human psychology.
Yeah, and it's interesting that this is no doubt the darkest film in the MCU. It's incredibly dark. I'm still recovering, Steve, okay? I'm still trying to recover. I saw it twice. I saw it Friday and Saturday. Still with me. It's just haunting ending.
Yeah.
And really tough moments throughout. And I was watching another video where they jokingly said, Marvel's not only doing better than the DC films, they're now doing dark and gritty better than the dark and gritty DC films.
Yes.
So they're kind of playing in their sandbox in a way, and of course, doing it better.
Yep.
So speaking of which, let's start off by doing our ranking as we did last time. So let's talk about, where does Avengers Infinity War rank? For me, it's ranking number 3. So my top 6 are The Avengers, Captain America Civil War, The Avengers Infinity War, Captain America the Winter Soldier, The Avengers Age of Ultron, and Thor Ragnarok. So how about you? How is this ranking for you?
That's a solid list. For me, it's a little bit different. But I think we have similar, like you said, overlapping movies that has to do with our overlapping taste, probably. I would say this movie currently has replaced my previous number one, which was Avengers, or what the UK calls it, Avengers Assemble, which is the first team up movie that was made back in 2012, I believe. That's the one.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, you're saying this is better than all the other, what, 17 movies or 12 other movies?
Exact 18, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes the top place, but I do have some ties in there. So my number one ranking is the Avengers Infinity War, the Avengers, or I should say Avengers Infinity War. Number two is the Avengers. Number three is Captain America Civil War, tied with Captain America the Winter Soldier. I think the Captain America narrative has been very impressive, especially for a character that was created in such a cheesy way. They've gone really deep with the character, and with like politics and I guess personal arcs and stuff. So very impressive. Number four for me would be Thor Ragnarok. Five is a tie between Iron Man and Spider Man Homecoming. And I kind of thought about it and I said, maybe the common thread between the two is because RDJ is in both. Maybe that's why. But and then I would say my last one in the top, I went with six, would be the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
We like them all. And what's interesting is they're constantly recycling, they're bringing in new characters. And spoiler alert, now we know Captain Marvel's coming because of the post-credit scene. So why don't we begin with talking about our screenwriting lessons, things that we noticed dramatically in the film. So my first one is unity of theme. Okay, the theme here is sacrifice. Specifically, characters being forced to make these impossible choices of sacrificing their friends and loved ones for a greater good. I thought they did a great job. That was present in every single line of action, every single location. It's interesting because some characters could do that. They could make the terrible choice, like Peter shooting Gamora. He tried at least, and then his bullets turned into bubbles. Wanda tried to kill Vision. I mean, she basically did by blowing up the stone, because Black Panther's sister was unable to do that in time. Right. So she was able to do that. Thanos killed Gamora, who we didn't quite believe that he fully loved her until that moment, which really deepened his character. And we'll talk more about that as well. Now, this relates to what I think is the biggest hanging question in the film as far as the action of the film. Why did Doctor Strange give Thanos the time stone to save Tony Stark's life? Because he expressly said earlier that he would choose the stone over either Peter Parker or Tony Stark's life.
Right.
Now, since then, I've been doing a little online researching, and it seems valid that people say, well, remember when Doctor Strange did his look into the future and he saw millions of possibilities and only one possibility of them beating Thanos. So it would seem that the one possibility had to include Thanos getting all of the Infinity Stones. So therefore, he knew he had to give him the Infinity Stone, which is cool. And I think they leave that hanging for Avengers 4. So yeah, I thought that worked well. What do you think?
I think that worked perfectly. I really didn't have a problem with that because it does play into his character as a hero and as someone who learned to be a little bit less selfish from the original Doctor Strange movie. In a way, you could think of maybe he did follow through in his process that he would gladly sacrifice Iron Man or Spider-Man, because if he hadn't given the stone to Thanos, Spider-Man wouldn't have disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So maybe he saw that future too. So he's probably like, all of these heroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe needs to die after I give the stone, but at least secures our success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just the element of surprise there, they subverted our expectations.
Yes.
We thought he wouldn't give him the stone, and then he did, and that was shocking.
Yep.
And it was powerful, and that happened a lot, and that needs to happen in a good story, is you need to subvert our expectations. You have those strong setups and strong payoffs, and those payoffs have to be surprising,
Yep. And Marvel also did a really sneaky thing too. It wasn't just the story that subverted our expectations, but if you notice the trailer editing they did, there are a lot of things in the trailer that didn't show up in the movie. And they really messed with us. There's a scene where Iron Man, I think, is missing his left arm. in the trailer. So everybody suspected that Tony was going to lose an appendage during the movie, which didn't happen. And then there was a scene where it was in the first trailer where you saw like Bucky, Captain America, Incredible Hulk, and Black Widow. They're running towards the screen right before the Avengers logo came out. Well, the Hulk never appeared in Wakanda.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Wow, I forgot about that.
Marvel completely faked fans out with in a way, it was kind of like a fake trailer. It just showed highlights of bits of appetizing scene.
Yeah. Yeah, and they have to do that. I mean, that's one of the things I often wonder is how do these studios keep everything under wraps, Yeah. I mean, I know that they sign every person to an NDA, but you look at the credits, there's like 1,000 different, visual effects artists and stuff. And you just think really one guy in Korea didn't download a scene and put it on the internet. It's just amazing that they keep that secret.
Chris Hemsworth I saw him on a talk show or something, or being interviewed. He said that the security was so tough in there that when they did when they gave the scripts to each of the people to read, the cast, this is the main cast too. They actually gave them the whole script, but the scripts had different scenes in them that were completely different from the main movie. So only the director and the lead screenwriters knew what the whole narrative was about. So someone like Thor and all the other Chris Hemsworth and Robert Downey Jr. got scenes that were just made up that weren't even part of the movie. They just mess with them. And then also they said that they had times when they were on set and they saw these extras get led off of the set by like men in black suits or security guards.
Okay, so what's your next lesson or observation?
My next lesson is destroy your hero and rebuild him. I would say we saw this most evident with Thor. I mean, Thor in this movie, I mean, I'll say I'm a DC fan first. I'm a Superman zealot. But Thor in this film, and I know it's different universes, gives Superman a run for his money in the heroism department. I mean, just the fact that we see him devastated, like at the very start of the movie, where he's virtually beaten down, watches his only family member, Loki, get killed in front of him. In the process, I mean, this is actually even more emotional for us because Loki had, throughout the films, other than the first Avenger and the past movies, he sort of redeemed himself starting with Thor, the Dark World, because he sort of saved Thor's life. They were unified by the death of Frigga, which is their mother. And then Loki really redeemed himself in Thor Ragnarok. I mean, he still had his selfish ways. I mean, he was still Loki in a way, but
it's kind of been the dance of Loki is
exactly. He became
he still is mischievous, but he does come around in the big moments.
Exactly. And he's not a villain anymore. He's an anti-hero, right? So in this one, even at that point where he presents the Tesseract and Thor jokingly says, "You are the worst brother," right? And you saw him take a dagger out, he's still doing the right thing. He wants to do the right thing. And when Thanos kills him for that, and Thor sees that, it's very devastating because we saw how far Loki has come, and at the same time, we know Thor would never betray his brother. Even in the first movie where they're fighting on the Bifrost, he was devastated when Loki died because he didn't want to kill his brother. He didn't want his brother to die. He just wanted to stop his brother from doing something bad. So when he had a triumphant return, I mean, you need to. I'm sure you would agree. I mean, when he landed on Wakanda, when I saw Stormbreaker fly out from the Bifrost before it dissipated, that was just one of the most amazing scenes. And when it went back to his hand, I mean, that was just one of the most heroic and awesome scenes I've ever seen in MCU and probably in any superhero movie.
Yeah, that was definitely a huge moment, and that was the moment where I yelled the loudest, I think. Yeah, and there was a huge crowd reaction for that. Well, that's an interesting segue into my next point, which is a unity of action and goals. There's definitely unity of theme, as we talked about that theme of sacrifice throughout, but there's a unity of goals just in a simple way. One central goal for the heroes: stop Thanos from getting the Infinity Stones. And then the opposite goal for the villain is to get the Infinity Stones and bring about, destruction. All of their internal goals go back to theme, which is decide who they can sacrifice or not, to achieve these goals. But it's, as we talked about before, like it's hard to write a simple story. you know, with just
Exactly.
one goal this way, one goal this way, and conflict in between, obstacles in between. And they did that. I mean, imagine this movie with 75 characters, literally, and they came up with a really clean through line,
Yep.
you know, for heroes and villains. So that was really cool.
Right. So like Thor, another example, like you know, you'd be like, okay, his goal is basically creating Stormbreaker. Well, no, his ultimate goal is to kill Thanos and to secure the Infinity Stones so that he doesn't take over the universe. I mean, so it's just like all the other heroes that they need to stop Thanos. Same with Iron Man, same with Doctor Strange, same with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and same with Gamora. Gamora and Nebula, you know, they were trying to stop Thanos. They just had different ways of approaching it. You know,
with mini, they had mini engines or mini stories.
Exactly.
That had to all converge or
Right.
have the same thrust of that central through line of defeating Thanos. Yeah.
I mean,
but they wouldn't have worked if they weren't all pushing forward on the same line. Okay, so the next point would be having a villain who is complex. Thanos is complex. He actually loved his adopted daughter, who he used to torture, you know, and he killed her parents, and yet he still cared for her. He hated the suffering and the pestilence that he saw in the universe and on his home planet.
Right.
And he really truly believed that it was mercy to kill half the universe. You know, you always have to have your villain believe in their goal. And ideally, we empathize with them. I can't say I really had any empathy, but I understood his motivations, you know. You had that same point, which is a great villain makes a great hero or heroes.
Right.
My next point was great character introductions and resurrections, because we saw some characters resurrected as well. In an ensemble film, I mean, you have to have cool ways to introduce your characters, surprising ways, and then resurrect them just when we thought they were out of the action. So, like, for example, you were saying Thor's resurrection, his showing up with Stormbreaker in Wakanda, was such a cool moment, and it was an amazing moment, and it happened in a way that we didn't quite foresee. But there were so many cool introductions of characters. Things like the Hulk in the opening, the only time we actually see him as the Hulk, when Loki has the line, "We have a Hulk," which echoes back to the original Avengers. The Guardians, we find them singing along to that 70s rock song in their spaceship. Captain America emerging from the shadows in the train station, you know, some really cool ones. A resurrection would be Nebula showing up on, I think it was Titan, to confront Thanos, you know, after Gamora was killed.
Right.
So just some really, really cool. Any others you can think of as far as introductions or bringing them back?
I would say like Spider-Man, how he's on the bus and then basically
cool, yeah.
The whole with his friend, like his friend will be always ultimate sidekick, just like, you know, want to be the man in the chair. I think you probably liked it better because he didn't use the porn excuse this time. He just says we're all gonna die.
Yes.
So, and then we had the predictable Stan Lee cameo as the bus driver. So I thought that worked really well because it played into Spider-Man's personality and he just wanted to go into action. One thing to add about this is that for screenwriting, a lot of people think, oh, you know, Marvel has the luxury to introduce these types of people and then people will clap and cheer because they have a history of this. It's actually not true because they always say, like, introduce your character so that you know this person is the protagonist, right? So it could be a completely new movie, but when you introduce this person, it should be so interesting, and they should be doing what they're good at, that basically it sticks in your head. You know this person is real. I mean, look at characters like John Wick or Robert McCall in The Equalizer. They're introduced doing something they're good at. So what Infinity War did was they re-emphasized that these heroes are great, and this is why they're great, and this is why they're powerful. So they didn't just like have a thing where they meet up. So in a way, you could say like the screenwriters wrote this screenplay almost like it's a first time movie. They didn't I think rest on their laurels and say, oh, they know who Captain America is, they know who Thor is. We just give a gentle thing of like, let's give them a call. and
Mm.
they didn't do
And
that.
what was great with how they the balancing these films over the years was like I had forgotten Tony Stark had never met Stephen Strange, you know. So
Yes.
then when Doctor Strange appears in front of him, he has to introduce himself, you know. I forgot that Hulk had been gone for 2 years, so he comes back and he says hi to Natasha, you know, and it's
Yep.
this emotional moment. So just what a saga we're just reminded of. It's 10 years of storytelling, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people were like, I think not, I mean, there's a YouTube video. I was kind of bummed because the theater I went to was like very quiet. They probably laughed and chuckled at the funny moments, but there was no cheering whatsoever. So I went home to satisfy that. I went on YouTube and I found a person that recorded all the audience reactions to every single thing that happened. And
That's
so,
awesome.
of course, the loudest one was the Thor reappearance in Wakanda, right? The arrival in Wakanda.
Mhm.
People were screaming in that one. But I noticed how people reacted when um, RDJ or Tony Stark met Stephen Strange and they were talking. People were just cheering just with them coming out. And for me, it's like that was actually one of the meetings between those two characters I was very looking forward to because they're both essentially very much the same character if you think about it. They're both originally arrogant, right? And they're both
Mhm.
wealthy, and they both like went on this sort of the soul searching that they did. So I wanted to see how those two would interact with each other. Same with like I
Mhm.
want to see in the fourth movie a fully grown or maybe giant Groot interacting with Hulk because they both have very little to say and see how that works out. So
Mhm.
I just want to see these how do you say it? These parallel characters that are sort of the same try to interact with each other. It's sort of like holding up a mirror of themselves and seeing how they would react. So it was fun. It was fun seeing that.
And you can imagine in the writers' room, probably so many team ups had to be thrown out. Like, you know, they're like, okay, it'd be great if Doctor Strange met Iron Man. Let's see that interaction. But they're like, oh, we're gonna lose Doctor Strange, you know, and Spider Man, or you know, or something like that. Although they did interact, but just there's probably so many great moments that they had to leave on the cutting room floor. You know, it must have been so hard to make those decisions.
Oh, and speaking of that, just a real quick point of how you said they sort of cut out certain team members. If you notice that they did a great job of sort of having what was previously they were previously relegated to a team. They mixed those teams up, so there's an element of each team within this new team that they had in Infinity War, right? They didn't just have the Guardians of the Galaxy go off in one chunk to do to acquire a stone or fight Thanos. If you look at who Tony Stark went off with, he went off with Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and Star-Lord. So it was a good mix of all the other characters from the other movies. They didn't just have just the core Avengers go off. They had them
Yeah, yeah, I
along
really like that.
so they could learn about them and they could get some exposition out of them.
I liked how they managed the arcs of the characters. Almost every character has an arc. And considering the ending slaughter, you know, they have some really heartbreaking arcs, like Peter Parker's, you know, death. A lot of people said that was the most heartbreaking one. Um, but just managing them all must have been just such a feat by the writers, you know, and then the editors as well. So what was your next point, Steve?
This movie is unique in the sense that the character development have already come prior to this movie. In those 18 movies, they've already done that. So this movie is sort of a beginning of a capstone, beginning of a chapter end for those 18 movies of where it's been leading to. So that's one of the things I want to say is that a lot of these critics when they judge a movie like this, they almost judge it against something like a Woody Allen film, like a single location. One person has to be like, crying and depressed and all that's, that what's the theme, what's the character
I
development.
don't know. Have you seen reviews that did that? I don't know if they quite
Well,
would go that
go
far.
look at go to Rotten Tomatoes and look at the scores that are rotten. I read those and they go off saying like, "Oh, this is another juvenile movie that has eye candy with very little character development and basically overly long." And I think it's the fact that a lot of people have actually come back and said, "Well, you haven't seen the previous 18," and so the critics who are actually responding to these readers are saying, "We don't need to see the previous 18. These movies should be self-contained," which is not true because The Marvel
Mhm.
Cinematic
Yeah.
Universe is an interwoven tapestry of multiple solo heroes going for one goal. Everybody came in knowing that, because you're never going to see a sequel to Blue Jasmine. You're not going to see that. You're not going to see a Blue Jasmine Allen, right? You're not going to see that. You're not going to see Emily too. You're not going to see that either.
Mhm. The
So
Florida Project 3, The
exactly,
Revenge.
yeah, yeah, something like that. Yeah, you're not going to see that, right? So, good or bad, that's a subjective opinion, but interesting movie that follows the tenets of screenwriting, of storytelling. Always have those three goals: conflict, escalating conflict, like you sort of emphasize, active protagonist, and also a singular goal that's really difficult to attain.
Mhm.
That's it.
Mhm.
That's it. So no matter what movie you look at, ensemble, anything that has that. So I would say any screenwriter, whenever they're writing their screenplay, just keep those three things in mind. When at one point you have a scene that lacks any of these three, rewrite those scenes, because your audience will lose sight of it and go, "What was the point of this?" Even if that scene isn't directly playing into the real goal, you have to think of that scene as a smaller movie and think of what's the goal of this scene and what's keeping
Mhm.
this protagonist from completing this goal in that scene. So, like,
And to as really, I think, representative of how complex the film was, it wasn't just one long 2 hour battle. You
right,
know,
right,
if all it was eye candy and CGI and action, it just would have been, a battle in Wakanda for
right,
2 hours. With just back and forth action blocking.
right,
But there was so much more to it. Um, and
right,
that's why I think it works as a film. But like you said, it can't only be a standalone film. You can't jump in. It would be funny if somebody jumped in and watched, this was their first Marvel film of all time. They'd be quite confused.
yeah,
But speaking of that, what's really exciting is they're rebooting it back to the original Avengers. Now, logically, it doesn't quite make sense that all these other characters died.
right,
Vision, Scarlet Witch died, Black Panther dies suddenly, but all the original Avengers somehow lived.
right,
But I don't care, because I just am excited that Avengers 4 is going to be back to the original core members.
right,
And it's a tribute. It's a way to bring it all together, to end an era. And it's also kind of a tribute to those actors, because probably most of their contracts are up.
yeah,
And they're kind of saying, you know what, we'll give you another tour de force for
yeah,
you playing these characters for one last time. And the audience is definitely going to reward them for that. So I think that's a pretty exciting ending cliffhanger leading into Avengers 4, which the great thing is we have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, the glove looked like it was totally fried.
yeah,
So I don't know if that means the Infinity Stones are dead, or
yeah,
if you can use them again. Thanos achieved his goal, and he, in the end, like he said he was going to do, he's just going to watch the sunset. So he's on another planet, just sitting there with it. He doesn't have his weapon anymore.
right.
So even if they were to defeat him, it wouldn't matter. So it's an incredible mystery what they're going to do with the next film, which is great. I mean, it's so much better than knowing what's going to happen. Oh, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, or even they have to do this, they have to do this. Like, they have to resurrect all these characters. Do they? Maybe they're all dead. I mean, who knows? Do
Yeah.
you like that element of it, that it's just we're just left completely hanging?
Well, I love it. I completely agree with you with everything. Couple of things is that I totally agree with you with the, I wouldn't say illogical, but I think it's too coincidental that the original Avengers didn't die off. But I
Yeah.
mean, I agree with you with that. But I know where they're going with the story. Like I said, like Avengers 4 is basically a last hurrah, a send off for them, and it makes it more difficult because now they have very little team members, and on top of that, Tony and Steve in this movie have not officially buried the hatchet. They're still in a feud. So,
Mhm.
and again, it
Yeah.
calls back to the original Avengers where they couldn't even work together. The first movie where they hated each other, this one they're angry at each other because it's like, how could you just let all this fall apart? We've been through all these things and then you just threw that away. it's not a mystery to me that some of these characters are not going to stay dead, because it's already in the works. They're making a Black Panther 2 and also another
That's
Spider-Man
true.
Homecoming. So they got to be brought back somehow. What's a mystery for me right now is Thanos does believe that he's doing all this good, but has his true goal been revealed? Because in the comics, he destroyed half of the universe, or he killed half of the universe to impress the Mistress of Death, to court her, to show her like, hey, look, after all these heroes have saved everybody and done all these things, I brought it back to equilibrium, where now the people that were supposed to have died if these people didn't exist are now dead. Now, there have been a lot of speculation that this person he's courting, Mistress of Death, is actually Hela, Thor's sister.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? So he's thinking that that could be her. And then, and also, I don't think we really have confirmation that she's actually dead from the end of Thor Ragnarok, right? She did face off with that fire demon, or that giant fire god, whatever.
Surtur.
Yeah, that she went up against them, but there was no confirmation she actually died. And we know she's extremely powerful too. I mean, she destroyed Mjolnir, right? Thor's hammer. I think what Avengers Infinity War as a great lesson is, how to write a great ensemble film and also keep it a very clean through line and goal. I think it's a great lesson in that. And Kevin Feige had a very clear vision of what he wanted, and so he executed on that and stayed very consistent with it. And this guy was basically a tome of all this Marvel knowledge.
I don't think we're ever going to really see this again. It's just so hard to replicate this,
I mean,
it's just incredibly impressive what they've done with it. And even just, I mean, the way that they work with directors, obviously, because they plucked some directors, like the Russo brothers had only done TV. They never even done a feature before, and they just, I don't know, somehow tapped whatever it was inside them. And I personally think they're the best directors of the MCU, and they definitely direct action the best. If you compare like this battle in Wakanda to the battle in Wakanda in Black Panther, I think it's just more clearly blocked, and it's just better directed, edited. There's just something about the Russo brothers. They just really know what they're doing, and they must know how to manage all the special effects teams as well, really well,
completely agree with you. I mean, it's just like, if I was the producer, if I was Kevin Feige, I wouldn't even have entertained that thought. I'd be like, you guys haven't done, I mean, let alone a movie, but you guys haven't even done action before. Fine, you might have done that nice water fight or paintball scene in, I forgot, in Community, right? That was the only action scene. That's always referred to as that. That's a crazy decision. How can you take a guy who they weren't even TV directors in the sense of they directed something like Fringe or Smallville or one of those 1 hour action dramas. They were basically directing sitcoms, right?
Yeah, Arrested Development and Community. And then the director of Thor Ragnarok, he had done small indie films, and basically comedies, small little emotional indie comedies. So somehow they know how to tap great talent,
So maybe that's what Kevin Feige saw, is that, hey, maybe this is the chance to give these guys, I like how they think. Let's give them some resources to see what they can give us.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And even Kevin Feige had never done big movies before Iron Man. He'd done smaller stuff, but just once you give them the proper budget, if they have the talent and know-how, then they can really come through. All right, so why don't we wrap up? It was cool to talk to you once again, Steve Lam, about films in the MCU. So what do we have coming up? I'm looking forward to Captain Marvel. Is that next spring, or is that Christmas? When is that coming out? Do you remember?
I would say that's next year. I think it's early in the year, because of course summer will be Avengers 4. They have to have months. But the next one is Ant-Man and the Wasp. So I think, that's going to be a really, really fun movie, because I think Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy really show the lighter side of Marvel. I think Ant-Man more so than Guardians.
Yeah, and I wonder, there could even be a Captain Marvel appearance in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh, true.
That could be the very first time we see her as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's wrap up. I think we both loved the movie and thought it was epic. And it's been cool to discuss with you, Steve. So I guess we will see you next time.
Likewise. Yep. Thank you.
All right. Take it easy. Talk to you guys all soon.
Bye.